time for another episode of Studios Undone, but since we're all stuck at home, this episode's going to be a little different. Instead of touring another studio, I'm going to be answering your questions about how I made the first 5 episodes. Let's get undone.
Gerald Undone. He's crazy.
What's happening, everybody? I'm Gerald Undone, and I'm starting with the man in the mirror, and I'm asking him to change his ways. Alright, so laid out on the table in front of me, I have all the gear that I take to these tours, which answers the first part of Alyosha's question on Twitter, asking how much gear I'm traveling with. And they also ask if I had just one assistant and how much we rely on the lighting we find in each studio. So yes, just one PA. I've been bringing my partner Julie with me to these shoots, and we don't check any bags, so we essentially just bring what we can fit into each of our carry-ons. I use this one here from Tenba, which is a fantastic bag that I like a lot. And then the other bag that we bring, the one that Julie claims is her personal item, is this Think Tank bag, which is pretty good. It doesn't really have the options for, other personal items. It's exclusively a camera bag, but it's a great camera bag at that. I'll go over the gear more specifically as we go, but this is what it looks like. And aside from the Aperture MC, we rely almost exclusively on the lighting that we find in each location, which I think is a good decision for the series because it gives me a better understanding of what it's like to work in that featured creator space and with their stuff. Sam Beckman asked, how long does it take to shoot once you're in their studio, and in what order? Well, I try to shoot everything chronologically whenever possible. These tours can be a challenge to edit, and often I'm trying to get them finished to meet a deadline, so shooting things in order definitely makes that easy. There's 3 main chunks to the filming. There's the opening bits, like the phone call, the door knock, and the sponsor read, and then there's the actual tour, and then the interview. I'd say each section takes about an hour and a half to shoot, and I shoot them in that order. The original intention was to put the interview at the end, like I did with Make Art Now, but since then I've liked intermixing the interview questions throughout the video to keep it interesting and shift the pace. Scott, Paul, Amrita, and Julian, and maybe even a few others, asked about the planning and scripting aspects. So the only parts that are roughly scripted are the setups for the first few scenes. I go to each place knowing how I'm going to do the traveling sponsorship gag, so the phone call, the door knock, and the sponsor read all have to contain the setups for that joke. But it's not too heavily scripted. The advantage of doing this with other YouTubers is they all know how to carry themselves on camera and are quick on their feet. Basically, we just set up their normal shot, and I ask them to pretend like they're filming a video, but to make up whatever topic they want. Usually it's something pretty absurd, which is great.
All right, so today we're talking about why Jazzercise is not dead yet. We're bringing it... Oh, hey, Gerald, what's up?
And then they get interrupted with the phone call. They also have to act during this part too, because the phone doesn't actually ring for them. I add in funny ringtones and posts later on, and then they carry out my loosely scripted phone call in their language. I usually talk to them sort of like with a pretend phone in person, so that they have a more natural response to it, and then when I get home, I film my parts of that phone conversation based on how they played it. After that, the rest of the video is unscripted, except for my parts. My sponsorship read and my intro biography about the guest are scripted by me, but the rest of the video is their natural reaction, which I think really pays off during the tour and interview portions. I plan my interview questions ahead of time, but their answers are thought up on the spot, and the tour has no planning whatsoever. By the way, if you want a quick way to make a song sound like it's coming from a phone, just use the EQ in your NLE and roll off anything lower than about 400 Hz and anything higher than about 4000 Hz and boost the stuffy midtones in between. And you should be left with a slightly distorted, dynamically limited music that sounds like it could be coming from a phone. Then I like to work with keyframes to adjust the bass and pan as they pick it up. If the phone goes from one side of the frame to their ear, pan it from that side to the center for a more believable effect.
What's up, Peachy fam? Today we're talking about Jake Paul's 69-step program to financial freedom. Why is he calling right now? Hello.
Some great questions from Paul Feinberg, 2 we've already answered, but let's look at the budget question and the microphone question. So, regarding the sponsorship, a question that was also asked by Emilio, no, Storyblocks does not directly pay me to travel. I think it'd be unfair to ask them to cover the costs associated with renting hot air balloons and submarines. But no, it's just a flat rate that I get from them regardless of how far or how long I travel, and the budgeting is up to me. But it's a great partnership because not only does it integrate humorously into the videos, which of course is awesome from a retention point of view, but it's also kind of self-fulfilling in a way, because I actually have to use the platform I'm promoting for each of the videos that I mention it in. In order to make those travel gags each time, I actually have to browse the platform to find the footage I want, download it, and so on. And I always do, and it's always easy. So when I say in my videos that Storyblocks is an impressive collection of stock footage, and that the interface is easy to use and navigate, I'm speaking from experience as someone who had literally just used it to make their video. And when I talk about needing footage that would otherwise be logistically impossible or budget-breaking to acquire, it's true because it's not like I can afford to film these crazy travel stunts the old-fashioned way. I think it's just a neat, full-circle integration, which makes me much more comfortable recommending them. Wait, did I just give them a free sponsor spot in my video? Maybe I can get them to pay for that. Yeah. I'm just going to head over to the headquarters real quick to see if they're cool with sponsoring this video. Give me about 15 minutes. Okay, good news. This video is officially sponsored by Storyblocks. Okay, so now on to the audio question, which was also asked by Curtis Judd and a few others. So just like the lighting, whenever possible, I like to use the equipment that's available in the space to get the full experience. So for most of the single person talking head stuff, I just use the guest microphone that they usually use and that I mention in each respective video. But for the tour, I use a camera mounted shotgun microphone, this Rode VideoMic NTG. Now this wouldn't be my first choice if audio quality was key, because at times the mic is placed too far away and can be off axis when you're trying to film it from like a 24mm lens across the room. But what I do find is that it gives a more honest experience of what it sounds like for you guys to actually be in the space. I considered doing labs, but then when we're discussing the reverb of the studio or where the bad waves or ambient noise is coming from, you wouldn't be able to appreciate them as much, and I find that it would kind of take you out of the experience. Now for the interview, I focus more on getting clear audio, and in most cases, the featured creator has either a podcast setup that we could just use or a matched pair of microphones. But for the cases where they don't, I bring a second VideoMic NTG, a pair of Manfrotto Pixies, and some extension cables so that I can run them with these XLR adapters into the Zoom F6 and record it that way. I also use the Zoom F6 for the other audio recordings as well, even when using their microphones, just so I can record it in the way that I want and keep track of my own files. The Zoom F6's unclippable 32-bit float audio is handy here for giving me confidence that the audio will be usable regardless of any volume changes without needing to fuss with it and slow down production. I'm actually recording the audio that you're hearing right now on the Zoom F6, so it's in the shot, but I don't want to monkey with it too much because the XLR cable that you're seeing run into it is connected to this microphone right now. But it works great. I love this recorder. I got a fun question here from Miles asking what the most common piece of equipment was that I encountered at the different studios. And it would probably have to be the Aperture 120D, or 300D in some cases, behind a light dome. Some people were using Mark IIs, some Mark Is, but everybody, except for one, had an Aperture COB with a parabolic diffuser. Heck, I'm using one right now. I got the 300D Mark II behind the Aperture light dome too. Many of you asked about the cameras and lenses used for this project, which makes sense. This is a gear channel, so let's go over that now. I try to keep things simple and small and light for this series, again, because of the carry-on luggage. So camera-wise, we've got the Sony a6600 with the Sigma 16mm f1.4. This goes on the Ronin SC for the tour portion. Julie operates this using the a6600's excellent autofocus, but occasionally spot focuses when necessary. This camera then becomes the wide shot during the interview. Normally we switch over to manual focus for the interview, but I believe the last time with Tyler Stallman, we left it on autofocus and it worked well. We also bring the Sony a7 III, which I use for any of the opening scene shots that aren't filmed on the guest's camera, like the door knock. It's also used for photos and for the thumbnail, and then it becomes the tight shot during the interview. It's sporting Sigma's new 24-72.8, which is an amazing lens for the money, and gives me enough range to know that I'm covered for whatever shot I need to get during these tours. It also doubles as a nice walk-around combo for travel photography if we get a chance to explore a bit when not shooting. I shoot an S-Log 2 on both of these, that way I have the most flexibility in post and have the most safety in highlight retention, since I don't usually know the environment that we're going to be shooting in that well. And I bring a little X-Rite color checker for setting the custom white balance and checking for color accuracy. All right, before we move on to the last few questions, let's talk about some other gear that we have on the table here. So I bring spare batteries, obviously, for the Sony cameras, and I bring memory cards as well. I have this little Polar Pro case here that has all my memory cards in there. I've been using the Sony Tough cards a lot. These are the G ones, but also the M ones are quite good and definitely sufficient for the Sony cameras because you actually only need V30 cards for the Sony cameras. But they're good bang for the buck to still have fast transfer speeds in post when you want to get the footage off the cards, because that's probably the slowest part of the step, but the cost is still pretty good on them. They might be my new recommendation, Sony Tough M, for my favorite SD cards right now. I also bring this battery bank here from Anker and some USB cables. I can use this to charge the camera on the fly if I need to charge the Aperture MC, my phone, pretty much everything that I would need to power over USB, including charging the gimbal. I can do that using this Anker power bank. And then I bring some cleaning supplies, obviously the rocket blower, got a lens pen and a cloth. And then headphones for monitoring, that's part of the audio thing. These are those Sony wireless ones I've talked about before, the WHX1000, whatever they're called. The reason why we bring them is, again, to save space, because they're great on the plane because of the noise canceling option, some of the best plane noise canceling I've ever heard. And then they work as monitoring headphones for Julie while she's walking around with a tour, just so that she can hear everything and make sure there's nothing weird going on in the shot. Sometimes, though, we do hear weird things in the shot, and then we leave it in anyway, again, for the whole immersion aspect for you guys viewing it at home. Phone, obviously, for social media stuff, and also for some of the gags, like the phone thing. And then we've got the clipboard over here, which, you know, it's big shtick for the video. Got the purple stars, my clicky pen, and the clipboard. Nothing fancy, really, about that. I think I got it at a dollar store, but it fits the bill. And I think that is about it for gear. If I missed some things that you guys want to know more about, feel free to ask me questions in the comments, and I'll be sure to get to them either in another video, in a live stream, or I'll try to reply to the comments down below. Some of you might know me and think, hey, how is he doing this with SD cards? He hates SD cards. Why isn't he bringing his Ninja 5s and recording SSDs? It's purely just for space. If I could take all that stuff on the plane and keep space down, then I totally would. And I think for the studio tours that I'm going to go to that I can drive to, I probably will do that. I probably will bring cages on these cameras and rig them out with bigger batteries and recorders and SSDs and everything, because why not? And tripods, that's something I didn't mention. I don't bring any tripods either. Again, that would inflate the space a lot. So I rely on the tripods in each studio. Luckily, if you're going to a YouTube studio, generally there's 1 or 2 spare tripods that we can use there. The only catch is that I've been finding that I accidentally steal people's quick release plates because I leave them on the bottom of the cameras, and then I go home and realize I still have the quick release plates and have to ship them back to them. I'm still sorry about that, Sarah. Anyway, let's move on to the final question, which was easily the most asked question and petitions me to pick my favorite feature I've observed conducting these tours, or as Caleb Pike asked, an idea that I'd like to take home and implement into my own studio. So when I saw Josh from Make Art Now monitoring himself with a big computer monitor, I thought, as Photo Joseph put it, why the AF haven't I done that yet? Being able to see yourself like that while self-filming is so useful, and is something I've stolen and implemented in my own setup since then. Then I saw it again at iPhonedo and at Stallman's. It's just such a simple, affordable, and useful option, because you can even just repurpose an old monitor or TV, and it makes things so much easier when it comes to nailing critical focus or just making sure you don't have anything weird going on in the frame. Then something I saw at Potato Jets and Seradicis was the use of a dynamic podcaster mic to deal with the abundance of reverb in their space. My approach has always been to just go crazy with sound treatment, and while I do still think that's the better long-term solution, you can get great results by just sticking a dynamic mic right in your face like Gene does. So if your space sounds bad and you're not afraid of having a mic in the shot, that's a solid workaround. Lastly, I just want to close with the questions many of you asked about my plans for the series moving forward. In my mind, this series is far from over. It's just been put on a bit of a hiatus until it's safe to travel again. And I've got several exciting studios lined up for you guys as soon as it's responsible to tour them. But that's going to be it for me. I hope you found this video entertaining, or at least helpful. And if you did, make sure you leave it the old thumbs up and consider subscribing if you haven't already. But if you did not find this video helpful or entertaining, well, then I'm going to have to take some points off. All right. I'm done.